Check this, 50 tons of ammunition versus attack helicopters. That is happening in Syria, where tensions are rising as the U.S. boosts rebel forces with all that ammunition. Militants also fired rockets at Russia's embassy today in the Syrian capital of Damascus amid a pro-Russia rally outside. So to Russia, Russia's ramping up airstrikes with attack helicopters and planes in the country targeting anti-government fighters. With the U.S. and Russia on opposite sides, China warns the two countries are edging closer to an all-out proxy war. Could the Cold War enemies be heading for a hot war in Syria? We bring in retired U.S. Navy Captain Chuck Nash joining us. He spent more than 25 years as a naval aviator. He's now a Fox News military analyst. U.S.-Russia at war with each other. That's an overstatement at this point, but it sure looks like it right now if you go 30,000 feet above Syria.
Yeah, if you go 30,000 feet above Syria and you look down, what you actually see is kind of a unique situation. You've got the United States trying to undermine a sitting government, and you have the Russians trying to withstand a rebel assault against a sitting government, which is sort of a role reversal of where we normally come down on these things.
Russia is doubling its arsenal and its airstrikes. The U.S. threw in, as we mentioned, the 50 tons of ammunition. I am wondering, Captain Nash, what happens if somehow shoulder-fired missiles or surface-to-air missiles get into the region, bring down a Russian warplane, and suddenly it's the U.S. versus America rather than ISIS versus Assad or the Russians versus ISIS, etc.?
Yeah, this has escalation written all over it. The potential for this to mushroom out of control is actually fairly high. If you look at where the United States and our allies have been flying missions since the Russians started flying, we've withdrawn to the far eastern regions of Syria, and we've pretty much let the Russians alone, except for some incursions of F-16s coming down out of Turkey that get fairly close. But other than that, we're trying to stay away from this. But as the weaponry goes up, even U.S. officials have admitted that we are greatly relaxing our vetting standards on who we give weapons to. So,
are you against Assad? Okay, you get the weapons. And could those weapons, let's say it's a tube-launched, wire-guided missile that somehow hits a low-flying helicopter and a Russian pilot gets killed. Suddenly, Putin will point at the U.S. and say, your fault, I'm after you now?
Liz, not only that, but I'll take it one step further. You've got Mohammed al-Gandhi, who is the guy who heads the al-Nusra Front in Syria, which is the al-Qaeda affiliate, saying to his Chechen brothers that they ought to revamp and start back on their attacks on Russian targets inside Russia, i.e. the terrorism war inside Russia. So when Russian citizens start dying, when the bombs start going off there, the Russians are going to look at the United States, and then we're going to look for some kind of a tit-for-tat relationship.
And now we have the Dutch investigation. It seems like a sidebar, but it reveals that the Malaysian Flight 17 was brought down with a warhead that the Russians make. So it appears, and this was July of 2014, it appears that it was those Russian rebels that were supported by Russia, that weaponry, no blame is assigned in the investigation report, but look at this, and then we can show you how they pieced that plane together. And what a disaster. And what did they find? They found that the co-pilot and the pilot had hundreds of pieces of shrapnel in their bodies from that weapon provided by the Russians.
Yeah, they can do amazing forensics and rebuild all these things and go back to it. But it was an SA-11. They call it a gadfly. That's the NATO terminology for it. But it's a very, very capable missile. And against a commercial airliner, it's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Look at this. We're looking at it, and it just looks directly like a missile hit it of some sort. Captain Nash, thank you very much. As we watch and see if you're right, if escalation is written all over this.